For most of my life, I genuinely believed that being nice, that universally agreeable and conflict-avoidant kind of nice, was the highest moral standard I could reach. If I was liked by everyone, I was doing it right. And if I kept the peace, I was virtuous. It took me a long time to realize that wasn't virtue. It was just being a coward. The thing about nice is that it isn't really a moral position at all. It's a reputational strategy. When you're agreeable to everyone, regardless of who they are or what they actually stand for, you've made an implicit decision. Your image matters more than your judgment. You're not choosing what's good. You're choosing what's safe. And the problem is, it looks like goodness from the outside. It sounds like kindness. It wears the right face. The person who gets along with everyone, who never makes waves, who always says something warm, that person looks virtuous. But Confucius thought that was one of the most dangerous illusions in the world. He had a term for that kind of person. He called them the village worthy. The person who had correctly learned what virtue sounds like without ever actually doing the work of being virtuous, who mirrors the form of goodness so successfully that they become impossible to criticize, and in doing so, make real goodness harder to recognize. They don't steal your wallet. They steal the standard. Confucius's word for them was blunter than that. He called them thieves of virtue, because if you are equally liked by the honest and the dishonest, you haven't achieved some kind of universal harmony. You've just successfully laundered your own integrity until there's nothing left. The harder standard, the one that Confucius actually held, is this. The good people should like you, and the bad people should not. Being disliked by the right people is a sign you're doing something right. Being liked by everyone is a sign you're doing nothing at all. That's a tough thing to sit with, especially if you've spent your whole life trying to be the person who gets along with everyone. And that's what we're looking at in this episode. Exploring the Analects, Episode 11, Passages 13.24 and 17.13. The Village Worthy. Hey folks, this is Elliot Bernstein. Thanks for joining me for Episode 11 of Exploring the Analects. In this episode, we'll be talking about being a people pleaser, perfectionism, reputation, and the idea of the so-called village worthy through a discussion of passages 13.24 and 17.13 of the Analects. We'll read the passages in Chinese and English, explain their basic meaning, and discuss the historical and cultural context to provide a deeper understanding. After that, we'll analyze the language found in the passages as a way to learn new words and phrases in classical Chinese and modern Mandarin. You can listen and follow the episode guide on analects.net, where you'll also find the characters for the passages and key terms in this episode. Check it out and let me know what you think. You can always reach me at elliot@analects.net. All right then, let's get started. This is my informal interpretation of passages 13.24 and 17.13. Remember, this isn't a translation, but I wanted to capture something about the spirit of the passages that sticks with you for the rest of the episode. He told me, "Don't be fooled. the goody two-shoes isn't really all that good. So, having a spotless reputation doesn't mean you're actually one of the good ones? I replied. Yup. I thought for a second. All right. Well, if you can't trust people's opinions, what about being a contrarian? I mean, what about the guy everyone hates? That's a problem too. Okay, I give up, I sighed. Then how can you tell who's got it right? So he spelled it out for me. First, be clear on what it means to do good. If the people you see doing good like you, and the people you see doing bad dislike you, then maybe you're on to something. Just a note before we get started with the Chinese passages and their translations. 13.24 is the longest passage we've encountered yet, clocking in at 43 characters. It contains 4 phrases, so I'll pause after each Chinese phrase and give its English translation. Now I'll read the passages in a modern Mandarin pronunciation. 17.13 子曰：相怨，德者贼也. The master said, the village worthy is the thief of moral charisma. 13.24 Zigong 问曰：乡人皆好之，何如? Zigong asked, what would you say if someone is liked by everyone in their village? 子曰：未可也. The master replied, that won't do. 乡人皆恶之，何如? And what would you say if someone is loathed by everyone in their village? 子曰：未可也。不如乡人之善者好之，其不善者恶之. The master replied, that also won't do. What's better is someone who's liked by the good people of their village and loathed by the bad. It's easy to jump on the bandwagon when it comes to opinions. It feels good when everyone seems to agree with you. Whether that means liking someone everyone else likes, or disliking someone everyone else hates. If you haven't taken the time to observe someone's behavior and understand what they're really all about, more than likely, having a strong opinion about them means you're just enjoying being part of the crowd. That's enough of a problem. But what about when you're the person who everyone loves? Have you earned that love? There are people you like and dislike, so if you're doing everything you can to make sure even the people you dislike see you in a positive light, are you genuinely acting according to your beliefs and values when you're around them? These are the kinds of questions we'll be exploring next. I wanted to start this episode a bit more personally and talk about my own tendencies in psychology. I'd call myself a semi-reformed people-pleaser and perfectionist. If you know me, maybe you're laughing right now. I can be grumpy, maybe even a little uncouth, when I'm with friends and family. My clothes and hair aren't always well kempt. In fact, I'm probably a bit of a mess more often than not. So what's this people-pleasing and perfectionism I'm talking about? Well, I'd say it's pretty situational, mostly at work and in social situations. So let me give you a few examples of where I've found myself doing this in my own life. I'll start off with perfectionism. Now, I've played a lot of video games in my life, probably enough for a whole lifetime, even though I'm only halfway through it if all goes well. Anyway, even as a kid, I'd start a game, make one mistake, and quit. I wanted the top score, a perfect performance. Same thing with piano. I'd be learning a piece, make one mistake, then start over right at the beginning. I never thought it was a problem. I just wanted to get things right. But if you do the same thing when it matters, at work or at school, it is a problem because you rarely, if ever, get things done. It's not just that. When you always put something perfectly polished in front of others, it's harder for them to know what to give you feedback on. The point is, it's easy for perfectionism to slow your progress and hide the real you from others. I've also been a real people pleaser, and I still have this tendency at work and in social situations to this day. I grew up worrying about people disliking me. I suppose everyone does, but not everyone ends up dealing with that fear in the same way. Some people grow out of it. They're comfortable with the fact that not everyone's going to be their biggest fan. Other people never grow out of it. They have this deep-seated need for everyone, even the people they don't like or they don't respect, to have a positive opinion of them. And if I had to put myself somewhere on that scale of, I absolutely do not care if you love me or hate me, to, I need everyone to love me, I'm more toward the please love me side. Not that I need everyone to love me, but I still do fear being hated, or even mildly disliked, by anyone. When I meet someone new, I'll frequently think to myself, I'd better not say anything strange. I don't want to make a bad impression on this person. But what's the problem with that? Well, it's not too different from perfectionism. If you don't show others who you really are, they're going to be giving you feedback on an imperfect impression of you. They won't know what you value and what motivates you, and you'll end up surrounded by people who don't understand you. And when people don't understand you, it's always harder to get things done. Why am I going on about this? Because in this episode, we're focused on the so-called village worthy. Just listen to what 12th century commentator Zigong has to say about the village worthy, and you'll start to understand. The heart of a village worthy desires to be fully accepted by everyone in the world. They follow the prevailing trends to fit in with commoners, and they act loyal and pure to seek the approval of gentlemen. Sound familiar? The village worthy is definitely a people pleaser. They do everything they can to avoid criticism and win the praise of others. Not only is the village worthy a people pleaser, they're also a perfectionist. They're not satisfied with winning the praise of just some people. It has to be everyone. As the same commentary puts this, they 欲尽和天下人, or translating very literally, they want to the greatest degree possible to accord with all people under heaven. So who is the village worthy after all? Everybody thinks they know, but in fact, nobody has any idea. Ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. Every one of those answers is going to be a bit different. Each person saying positive things that are probably more a reflection of themselves than of the village worthy. The most dangerous thing isn't that each person thinks something slightly different about the village worthy. According to Confucius, it's that they fool people into thinking they know what morality is, which is why he refers to them as thieves of moral charisma. If you've listened to episode 5, you'll remember that de, or what I translate as moral charisma above, is this practically gravitational force. When someone has it, their own goodness attracts and rectifies others, and virtuous actions compound to build a more perfect world around them. The village worthy has a similar attractive power, but it's more like a black hole than gravity. Rather than real substance attracting others, it's a void with no true morality behind it to rectify those who are pulled close. Just like a black hole, anyone sucked in may be doomed to an eternity of spaghettified navel-gazing, convinced by this superficially moral person that they too are good, just the way they are. Anyway, now you've got an idea of who the xiāng, or village worthy, is. Definitely a people pleaser, probably a perfectionist, but most importantly, someone who's obsessed with appearing to be good to as many people as possible, as often as possible. And if I wasn't totally clear above, the problem Confucius has with that is that it steals from the value of true morality by diluting it and preventing people from recognizing goodness in its purest form. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Eliot's kind of overdoing it here. Confucius metaphorically called the village worthy a thief, but the passage doesn't say anything about being a black hole for morality or wanting to please others or any of that stuff. So where's he getting all of this? Well, that's why I'm pairing 17.13 with 13.24 in this episode. We're just not going to get that far with the 6 characters in the first passage, but if we run with the commentary that I mentioned earlier, that this individual wants to accord with all people under heaven, we're led directly to ideas like those in passage 13.24. After all, isn't someone like that also very likely someone who tries their hardest to be liked by everyone in the village? In passage 13.24, Confucius's disciple Zigong, who's known for philosophical mindedness and love of learning, puts a hypothetical in front of Confucius, likely as a way to try to understand what indicates a person is truly doing good in their life. The way I see it, he's asking, would it be possible to know a person is truly good just based on the fact that their whole village praises them? Confucius not only responds by saying no, but actually stressing that there's something wrong about that. So Zigong, curious to understand, turns it into a bit of a riddle. What about the opposite? What would you say about a person who everyone hates? And Confucius has the same reply. There's also something wrong with that scenario. Now, we don't know if Zigong expects someone everyone hates to be good or bad, just that Confucius thinks that's not a good situation. Fortunately, Confucius does elaborate this time. He says, it's best to be liked by the good and disliked by the bad. This is really typical Confucian logic, what's often referred to as yōng, or constantly hitting the mark. The core idea is, never go to any extreme. It doesn't matter if the world tells you money is good and poverty is bad, or the opposite, that money is the root of all evil, and so the impoverished are the most pure. Both views are too extreme, and the truth lies somewhere in between. It's your job to figure out the right balance and make that how you live your life. In the case of the opinions of people in your community, the idea is the same. Never go to the extreme. Never aim for everyone to like you, or for everyone to hate you, for that matter. Instead, with a firm understanding of who's good and who's bad, aim for the right people to approve of you, and be comfortable with the fact that there will be those who dislike you as well. Don't be a people pleaser. Don't be a perfectionist. and don't let public opinion determine how you act. You'll avoid being village worthy, and you might just end up in the company of good people. There's one more thing I want to mention about 13.24. Since it's bugging me, maybe it's bugging you too. This passage sounds almost tautological to say someone should be liked by the good and disliked by the bad. At best, it's a flat and lifeless phrase. And at worst, maybe it's completely meaningless. So I'm going to try to breathe a little bit of life into it. This passage uses the term 善者 and its opposite, 不善者, to refer to good and bad people. This character, shan, does mean good in modern Chinese, but its meaning in Confucius's time was more in line with meaning adept or skilled, that is, to be good at something. There's no obvious target for shan in this passage, so what skill is it referring to? Well, we just have to take the context of the passages around it, or of the Analects in general, and the teaching of Confucius as a whole, to figure that out. Confucius's major concerns were with things like building a harmonious world by learning to extend from love of family to love of humanity, and presenting and expressing oneself with the balance of directness and propriety that's appropriate to a given scenario. People who couldn't do these things would not be adept, so saying that they were 不善 actually makes sense. Those concerns I mentioned, they're skills that take practice to lead a virtuous life. So the 不善 would be people who are not adept at the specific virtuous behaviors valued by Confucius. And the 善 would have them well in hand. I hope that does a little to clear up what good and bad here mean, in my opinion at least. It doesn't matter if you're the teacher's pet or if everyone thinks you're nice. What's more likely to matter is whether or not those who know the right ways to act also recognize it's within you. All right, I think that just about wraps it up for this section. But to review, now you know who the village worthy is. That's someone who wants everyone to like them. You know why that's not a great quality to have, which is because it confuses people who need strong role models, and it dilutes the effectiveness of those who actually are doing the right thing. Finally, you know what's better than having everyone like you, or having everyone hate you for that matter. And that's being recognized by those who are doing the right thing, and being opposed by those who are doing it wrong. Now we're going to discuss the language in these passages with the goal of putting a few things out there for language learners at any level. As usual, if you don't find something for you, just give me a shout at elliot@analects.net. Also, fair warning on this section for this particular episode, it's long. If you're not interested in Chinese characters, etymology, or translation, I wouldn't blame you at all for tuning out now. I'll start off with some basics. Since we're 11 episodes in, I'll repeat a few things we covered earlier. 13.24 is a dialogue, so we see a number of characters indicating speech and response in the phrases. First among them is yuán, a pictograph of an open mouth with the tongue visible. This simply means to speak. So when you see ziyue, it means Confucius said. And Zigong wen yue means Zigong, the disciple we discussed earlier, spoke, asking something. In other words, since there's no punctuation in classical Chinese, this is about the closest you're going to get to a marker that you're about to read the words spoken by someone. The other phrase I'd consider a sort of speech marker in these passages is heru. I've translated heru above as what would you say? Since it's a way of soliciting an opinion. He is a question word, and it's still used in modern Chinese, though it's not very colloquial. And ru is the concept of comparison. So the phrase is a terse classical Chinese utterance asking what about? How would you compare? Or what do you think? We also see bu ru in the very last sentence. Same ru, this time paired with the negative bu. So now it's a statement. Instead of saying, how would you compare? It's making the statement, it compares unfavorably, or it's not as good as something else. My translation flips this around, so I just go directly with, what's better? Since there's a pretty strong functional equivalence between saying what's better and something else compares unfavorably, it's a natural phrasing in English. In terms of other possibly confusing and terse classical Chinese utterances, we see Confucius saying, 未可也, twice. I'll get to this ye when I discuss grammar in a bit, but let's look at this 未可 now. I can think of maybe half a dozen negatives in classical Chinese, and we just mentioned bu above. Wei is another, but it really means not yet. Modern Chinese will help you out here. Wei lai means future, but its components literally mean that which has not yet to come. A wei chengnian ren is a minor, or literally someone who is not yet mature. And wei zhi means not yet known. So where do we get combining wei and ke? Well, this ke is about acceptability, so you could translate it as not yet acceptable. I've rendered it as that won't do, to keep things colloquial, the implication being that you can do better, which is exactly where we get if we follow the logic of the passage. There's something better than everyone liking you, and there's something better than everyone disliking you. At this point, I think you know what it is. Next, let's cover xiāng. Xiāng refers to a village or the countryside, such as in the modern Chinese xiāng cun. We see the two character phrases xiāng yuán and xiāng ren here. The first, of course, referring to the village worthy, and the second meaning village people. No YMCA in that village, I'm afraid, unless it's the Young Men's Confucian Society. Anyway, now we're kicking around this village idea here, but it's really just a bit of a metaphor in these passages. Is there a literal village? Maybe, sometimes, but it really means a community. Just like we say someone's in town when they're in the area, regardless of whether or not there's actually a town. I'm going to digress just a bit from introducing the vocabulary as it appears in the passage and talk about the origins of xiāng. I think you'll find it fun. If you look up xiāng in the Outlier Dictionary, which is a resource available as a paid add-on to Pleco that I cannot recommend highly enough, you'll learn that xiāng was originally a pictograph of two people kneeling and sharing a meal. I'll try to put an image of that ancient form in the episode guide. It really does look like two people kneeling in front of some kind of a vessel. So the idea, I suppose, was that people who eat together share a community, and by extension, it came to mean the area where one lived. Another interesting note from Outlier is that all components of the modern form are empty. What does that mean? Basically, it just means that no element of the modern character is used to reference its actual meaning. For example, fu, a mound, appears on the right-hand side of the modern character, but it's not used to mean mound. It's more likely arbitrarily used for its shape, or as the result of quickly writing the character for calligraphy using a brush. Anyway, if you like this kind of trivia, you've got to check out Outlier. It's absolutely packed with it. As for yuán, this refers to someone who is cautious and honest. But of course, since we're dealing with appearances only in this case, the appellation really shouldn't be read as an honest assessment of the character. It's almost like calling someone a try-hard. Yes, their actions show they're trying hard, but it's derogatory. They're trying hard for all the wrong reasons. I'll finish off the characters in the first phrase by mentioning zē, or thief. Not much to say here, except this character is still used with the same meaning today. In Japanese, the most common word for a pirate is haizē, or kaizoku. If you watch the anime series One Piece, Luffy wants to become the haizē yuán, or king of the pirates. I've personally only heard haidao for pirate in Chinese, but I suppose haizē will be easily understood as well. And to be honest, I'm not having all sorts of conversations with people about pirates when I visit China. So maybe it is common. Now for the rest of 13.24. Jie is one of the most common classical Chinese terms meaning all. This isn't the kind of all that means always or generally. It refers to all things in a group, like all the people in a village, or all of the states in a nation. Next up is hao and o. Both of these can have multiple meanings, so don't let them trip you up. They're obviously used as opposites in this case, so only certain meanings will make sense. Hao does not mean good here, and it rarely does mean that in the Analects. Instead, it means to like, enjoy, or admire something. O can mean either evil or to detest something. Of course, you can't evil a person. It's not a verb, so we have to go with detest, which is also the natural